So this is going to be serious, but like kind of silly too. And I'm sarcastic, so this will be fun. If you don't catch my sarcasm, I'm sorry. It's just what I do when I'm nervous. So before we get started, I'm going to pray, and then we'll jump in. So God, thank you so much for today. I thank you for all the things that you've taught me. And I ask you right now that you would guide this lesson, that you would provide new insights to me and to everyone, and that you would just show us more how to love each other, how to love you, and more about who we are and who you created us to be. In your name I pray. Amen. Amen. All right, I got this cool clicky thing. All right. Whoa.
Watch out, world.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I am a teacher in my real life. And as a teacher, we do something called I can statements for kids. It's to help understand what they're going to be expected to learn. So I made some I can statements for the lesson today about what you should expect to learn today. So let's read these together.
Out loud?
Yeah, ready, set, go.
I can describe the purpose of 3 different personality typing systems.
So I don't know typing systems. So I have personally been studying these 3 different personality types. There's so many, but these are 3 that I have personally studied, and it's one of them in particular has really affected me, that I was like, Jen, I really want to teach other people what I've learned because it's helped me so much know more about myself. Okay, let's see what our next I can is.
Okay.
I can discover how God created me and communicates with me.
Everybody loves talking about themselves, right? This is going to be fun. Okay.
I can apply my understanding of personality types to better interact with and love my neighbor.
You need to know who you are before you can love other people better. And then, what did you say?
She said, I can't see this.
I know. That's what I was thinking of.
It's all right. I'm listening. She's auditory.
Ready? I can accept the fact that Hannah is not a professional psychologist and is just here to share what she has learned.
Just kidding. Okay. This is literally just what I have learned. Nothing more.
Right.
I've not gone to school for this.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So before we jump into this, like I said, I am just giving an overview of certain personality types and certain things that I've learned. But there's so many different personality types and things you can study. I'm just gonna be right on the surface. A lot of the sources that I use, books, online stuff, podcasts, I tried to use Christian sources, but there's some sources that were not Christian, but mostly I didn't want to jump into the hippy dippy stuff, I wanted to be more faith-based.
No hippy.
Okay, so personality types are meant to help clarify aspects of yourself. They are not meant to define you or put you in a box. So if one personality type is a color, like red, it doesn't mean you're only red. There's so many different shades of red. There's thousands of shades of red. So I don't want you to think that these are supposed to define who you are at all. Okay, so as we get ready to jump in, this is really serious. Are you ready?
Yes.
Here we go. I already said this.
Yep.
The goal. Kickstart, whatever. I need a volunteer. Look at those.
She's got a hand.
Oh, there's hands going.
So my clicky thing has a laser pointer. And whichever one it lands on. Oh! See, Mary Allison. All right, Mary Allison. Just stay right there. Are you ready for our first personality test?
Yep. Done.
What type of potato matches your personality? All right. Here we go, Mary Allison. Are you ready?
Yes.
Find out what type of potato matches your personality. Mary Allison.
Very legit, so I'm glad I know.
Choose a non-potato food. You have Cobb salad, mac and cheese, burrito, fried chicken, brownie, sushi, pizza.
Oh my gosh, burrito.
This is serious. Burrito? All right.
Good choice.
Thank you.
Mary Allison, how would you describe your personal style? Comfortable, quirky, bored, chic, thrift store chic, sporty, conservative, preppy, or retro?
I'm gonna go with either whatever I can afford or thrift store chic, but chic's probably not accurate, so let's go with whatever I can afford.
Okay, Mary Allison, choose an action star. We've got
Chris Pratt,
black.
obviously, you don't need to read it.
Chris Hemsworth's not up there, so Chris Pratt second.
It's the top right.
Not Nick Cage. The Nick Cage. Which word would your friends never use to describe you? Chill, organized, extra, predictable, quiet, loud, lazy, athletic, dull.
I'm gonna say
Never.
I'm gonna say dull. I hope.
Mary Allison, what's your ideal Saturday night? Drinks with friends, water, of course. Right?
Yeah,
Netflix and snacks,
Arbide sex
clubbing. Is that what date night is?
Let's switch it to Friday. Let's do Friday. Okay, Friday. Definitely trying a new restaurant. No, playing board games. Playing board games.
All right.
I wanted to try a new restaurant, then play board games, but we'll do play board games.
Then you want to see the date afterwards.
And she's not dog.
Mary Allison, which Muppet do you identify with the most?
Fozzie. Fozzie Bear.
I don't even know what
The
I
bear.
There he is.
I'm going on looks alone. I don't know a whole lot about
No, he's always making jokes.
Okay, I guess.
But his jokes like,
I could see lovable.
pick a cool new nickname for yourself. Cake fun? The cake, French fries, starfish.
I think I like little broccoli.
Oh my gosh, that's what I Shimobi. Mary Jacqueline.
I'd be French fries.
Okay, little broccoli. You got tater tots?
That's what I call names. Tater.
You're popular with people of all ages.
Wait, did you eat those tonight?
You did. Oh my gosh, people might not be able to handle your brand of excitement every day, but they definitely enjoy you once in a while.
That is definitely true. I can affirm that's accurate.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, in small doses.
Uh-oh.
Everything's
I don't know where my PowerPoint went. I can't live without the PowerPoint.
We need it. It's a must.
Just kidding.
We love the yellow flowers.
I know. Hey,
Yeah.
this is a great time to bring up those yellow flowers.
Where did you take that picture at, Hannah?
We should all go on a giant hike together.
That's in the narrows. What area?
Wow.
No, this one is taken at the one on 35.
Narrows on it. Doesn't look like narrows.
Glenn Thompson.
The one
Yeah.
on the corner by Trayvine and
Yes.
35?
That's part of the narrows.
Wow. What?
Mm,
It's like the same river?
Same river.
It's right off Trayvine and
35 and Trayvine.
Oh, that's that place down there. Okay.
There we go.
You found it.
Found it.
You found it.
Guys, the yellow flowers don't last forever, so I'm sure Hannah would want to tell you need to get out there soon if you're going to see them.
Yes. And we could all go on a hike together or something.
Okay, great.
Okay. Boom, boom, boom. We did this. Mary Allison found out what kind of potato she is.
Tater tots.
I got waffle fries.
Yeah.
That's delightful.
I know I'm really the best. Okay, so the first one we're going to jump into is love languages, which Jen covered a couple weeks ago. So we're just going to go a little bit deeper into them. So first I'm going to tell you a story about the Flemmings, which is my family, before and after the love languages.
Thanks.
So before the love languages, it was my birthday, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. You know, on your birthday, how, I don't know, do you guys get to pick the restaurant your family goes to on your birthday? Yeah, does anybody like plan it like months in advance?
Yeah.
No, just, yeah. Like, I think about where I want to go. Well, for this birthday, for some reason I hadn't figured out where I wanted to go, but the day of my birthday, I was like, you know what? I haven't been to Red Lobster in a long time. I remember their like cheese biscuits.
Cheddar biscuits.
Cheddar biscuits. I remember that those are really good. Everybody talks about those biscuits, man, that's where I want to go for my birthday.
Mhm.
All right. So I made my mind. I go over to my parents' house. My brother comes over and I'm like, all right, guys, I want to go to Red Lobster. And my mom says, you know what, Hannah, this new gyro place just opened up down the street. We should go there. I was like, okay, whatever. Yeah. You know, I was just like, whatever you want, you know, let's go there. So we go to this hole in the wall, 4 tables, greasy food. I was like, okay, like this is fun, you know, just hang out with my family on my birthday. It's fine. And then we finish our super greasy food that I really didn't enjoy on my birthday. And my family goes, hey, Hannah, let's go down the street to Big Lots. Let's just go down to Big Lots. I was like, okay, Big Lots, right? So we go to Big Lots and they say, Hannah, we forgot to get you a present. So you go pick out whatever you want, anything you want. Sean needs something, so we're gonna go get something for him. We'll meet you at the cash register. So I go walk around Big Lots trying to find something I wanted from Big Lots. I meet my parents up at the front where they had bought my brother this big art easel so he could do his art. And
on your birthday.
On my birthday.
She's not bitter.
So that was the Flemings before the love languages, okay?
Oh, okay.
Flash forward 2 or 3 years. They have learned about the love languages now. They know what my love language is, which is gifts and then acts of service, okay? Oh, first I want to say, like, the people who like quality time and like, what are the words? Like maybe they would have liked that birthday, liked hanging out with their family at Big Lots. You know, like maybe they quality time together. Okay, anyhow. All right, so my birthday, it was a Sunday morning, and I used to teach Sunday school at my church. So I would be here at shop Saturday night, kind of, you know, stay up late, all hanging out together. Sunday morning, wake up early, you know, kind of exhausted, go to church to teach little kids. It was my birthday. I was so excited. I get a text from my mom, go to your front door. I was like, okay, what? So I go to my front door and my mom is standing there with Bill's Donuts.
No.
Big Lots redeemed.
I know. I was like, what? She goes, I know your love language now, and I got up early and I went and got them for you. And I was like, okay. And then she, you know, she left. Have a good day. I was like, bye. You know, I didn't care about quality time. She got me some donuts, and now she's back. So that, like, still, I remember her bringing me donuts. And it's funny. She told me that morning when she was getting up early, she's going to drive to Bill's. My dad was like, Paula, what are you doing? And she goes, Dan, I know my daughter's love language. And she runs out. And ever since, now that we know each other's love languages, Christmas is more fun. She buys me little things that that show that she knows me. And it doesn't, I don't need the big things. It's just, you know, little things that shows that she knows me. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the love languages. And I'm just going to do with all these personality types, I'm just going to give you a little overview of where they came from, the purpose, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Love languages are by Gary Chapman, first published in 1995. He says the need to feel love is a primary human emotional need. So we can speak all of the love languages, but there's 1 or 2 that shout the loudest for you. Chapman believes that your primary love language doesn't change over time, but sometimes shifts due to circumstances. So the same one you had as a kid, you know, you'll have as an adult. So when it says sometimes shifts due to circumstances, such as maybe a mom who is like going to school or has a job, and maybe their primary love language is quality time, but they don't have any time right now to do. So maybe their husband or their kids are doing the dishes for them, making food. So they're doing acts of service, and that's what's shouting to the mom the loudest at that time. So so our love language can shift, like if your love language isn't gifts, but you get in a time of need, you get a gift of money, you're like, oh my gosh, they love me. Okay. So Chapman says, love is an action and must be demonstrated in a way that others can understand. So he talks about tanks and bank accounts. So he says an empty love tank is like running a car without oil. And then he talks about internal checking accounts. So with deposits and withdrawals. So if your love tank or your love bank account is full when someone deposits. So what does anybody think would be a deposit of a love language to someone? Anybody got an example of what one would be?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
When my husband wants me to scratch his back because he has physical touch, and I'm like, oh. But I'm filling his tank when I just scratch his back for like 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So that would be a deposit. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what do you think a withdrawal might be for any of the love languages? Anybody
When
have
your big brother says negative things about you.
Wow.
Wow.
So
Who is that?
I'm sure we can all think of withdrawals our loved ones have done to us, like maybe that something someone said to you that felt like it was.
Forgets to do your laundry.
Oh yeah, like acts of service when someone doesn't do something for you that they normally do, or if someone takes you to Big Lots, So Chapman says, with full tanks and full bank accounts, we can discuss differences and resolve conflicts. Have you ever been on a family vacation with an empty bank account?
Yes.
And just and conflicts happen and don't get resolved, and it's not pretty. So we've all been in those situations, right? Okay. And Chapman says that your emotional bank account cannot be filled unless your primary love languages are spoken. So like he said, you speak all love languages, but your primary one, like your love tank isn't filled without your primary one. So I thought that was really interesting. All right, so I'm sure that all of us probably have an idea of our love language, but one tool you can do is think of someone who loves you and then answer the question, how do I know they love me? And usually the first thing that comes to mind is one of your love languages. If you don't know your love language, there is a online test that I can tell you about later. So here's the 5 love languages. We are going to talk about each one of them pretty briefly. And what I want you to do is think about, maybe if you are that love language, I want people to share examples of when they've experienced that love language. And I want you to think about, if you are that love language we go through, I want you to think about how God has shown you love in that way. For example, I guess we'll go there with mine later, but with my love language, I can actually reflect and think of all the ways that I felt God's love through that love language. So I'm going to ask you guys for examples as we go through. So get ready to share. Okay, first one is words of affirmation. Proverbs says, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing, which is true for all of us, but I see for words of affirmation are so huge. So words can be spoken through encouragement, appreciation, compliments, nicknames. Does anybody have any fun nicknames in their family? Ridiculous they want to share? Anything embarrassing? Any nicknames anybody has? What?
Might be me.
Anybody?
His lamb.
Ooh, I like that.
Bug.
Oh, that's good.
For 2 weeks anyway.
And then the last one is talking about them in front of someone.
Positively.
Yeah. So I was gonna. In front of. See. So have you ever been someone's talking about you oh, they did this for me yesterday, or oh, she's really good at blah blah blah. Jen actually does this a lot. If you have noticed, she'll always talk about people in front of other people. It's awful. So
For you now?
I know. But before we go on to quality time, so words of affirmation, people. Does anybody? It's kind of probably. Does anybody of how they have another piece of
Interesting.
I mean, like, I feel like God saying,
But so this Nate is big words of affirmation person, and if he does something nice for me, or if he just like does anything around the house, and I come home and I don't say anything to him, you can see him like walking around like a puppy, like like his face is getting like really like he's like about to break out in sweat. Like, did you notice? And then I'll be like, thank you so much for doing the dishes or taking the trash out. You're so awesome. And then he'll go, like he can like breathe easier. That's why I'm proud of him. So I'm saying that I'm proud of him.
whoa, that's so cool. That's so cool I noticed that. Anybody else? God examples. Okay, so quality time. This is focused, undivided attention. It's willing to sacrifice other activities because you're saying you more important. I like being with you. So what's important with quality time is eye contact, like where you're not like distracted by other things. Some other examples are doing chores together, sharing thoughts and feelings, eating meals together, trips. Who in here loves road trips? Got someone? Who hates road trips? Yes.
That's our last one.
Both of them put their hands up. Okay, or like even sitting in the same room, just doing different things, like just being together is quality time. So anybody, quality time people in here, anybody want to share like their favorite quality time thing? Yeah, go ahead.
So these days I was feeling like I'm not able to do enough study. Like I cannot study Bible enough because of my exams and all. So whenever I want to take a break, I go for late night strolls. And then for half an hour or 1 hour, it's just my time because no one comes along because it's too late. So I'm the only person walking on the streets and then I get time to go.
Oh, I love that.
That's awesome.
Like
in the
dark. I've done that too.
Okay, I'm a quality time person, and God always gives me his full attention. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So my love and his real secure because of that.
Does he feel that?
Oh yeah, like this.
Okay, physical touch. So Matthew says, and people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. Physical touch can be spoken through high fives, hugs, pats on the back, playing with hair, rubbing feet.
Can you even read this?
Back, sitting close on the couch. All right.
This is my last one. It's my husband's first.
So sorry, all marriages.
So does he ever like show love to you by like giving you your space and letting you have your own corner on the couch?
He's gotten better at it, yeah.
Okay, does anybody have any examples of how God has touched them through physical touch? Or, yeah, Riley?
So at youth camp, I think it was like last year, we were like in worship, whatever, and like I had my hands out, whatever, and then it just felt like raindrops falling on top of me. Like I could like see the actual raindrops, and I haven't like felt that like manifestation of the spirit before, so it's really cool.
Yeah, that you felt love.
Yeah.
You got to feel that. That's really cool. Anybody else want to share? All right, gifts. A true gift is not a payment, but a symbol of love, showing that they were thought of and are known. So gifts can be spoken through small tokens, homemade gifts, souvenirs from a trip. That one's big for me. If my family goes on a trip, I'm like, bring me back something. Like I don't even care. I just want to know that you thought of me on your trip. Anything wrapped up. A gift person kind of like put a bow on something, and it's wonderful. And then I saw this and thought of you is like the key phrase. Any other gift people want to share about how God has touched them through gifts? Or how someone else has loved them through gifts?
You know, I'm just thinking of this when we're sitting here, but our daughter Claire is a gift person. Mm-hmm. And the first time that she experienced the Holy Spirit, she actually received many gifts, like spiritual gifts manifested in her. Mm. So it is interesting that that's how the Lord is loving her. Because she got like 3 gifts at once, which I don't typically see, and they all are manifesting. So,
wow.
There you go.
Yeah. Cool.
Tell us one of your stories.
Actually, I was thinking about Sherry made me a scarf and hat once. Do you remember that? Yeah, she made me a scarf, and I was like, oh my gosh, Sherry. Right. And I was actually telling Jen earlier about how thinking about the love languages and my personal love language and how God loves me through that is that I can sit and reflect and think of like the things that God has given me, or like think of how he's blessed me. And that just like fills me up with love, just thinking about the gifts that way. So that's pretty fun. So anyways, next one is acts of service. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. So acts of service, people love providing a meal, everyday chores, helping to do a task, and it's not something to be repaid or required, like without that feeling of like, oh, I need to do something back, like saving face. Shouldn't feel reluctant. So, is anybody in here acts of service that want to share? Oh, right, look up here. Front row.
Family except me.
Okay, Joni or Ray, do you guys want to share anything?
Which I want to share something.
Okay.
Because this totally makes sense. When years ago, when the girls were in Dayton Christian, we bought this house just so that they could get a youth group in that area. We didn't have to drive an hour or 45 minutes. And I remember that, we're all working. And some of the youth even came over, and Jenny's like getting really upset because she's like, I just want to have the youth over and have a party, because she wanted quality time. We were always working, Mom. We were always working. It's okay.
Wow.
That's funny. Yeah.
Well, I just want to share how God shows me through acts of service is he shows me where things are in my house, like that I can't find, and shortens my time for me, like as I'm looking. Like I literally see the things in my mind and they're there.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
God's helping you do a task.
Yep.
Wow, that's so cool. Anybody else have any insight with acts of service, or anybody? I just want to know, is anybody else in here acts of service besides these 3, 4? Okay. Cool. Just wanted to know because we can serve you. Okay, I found these online. I thought they were pretty cool. This one, love languages for kids. Online, on the Love Languages website, you can take a test for yourself to figure out your love language. They also have tests for kids, which when I did this with the kids, I had a PDF printout so they could answer it on a piece of paper. But you can answer it for your kids. And there's like, it goes from age 5 to teen, and there's in different age brackets. So that's pretty cool. If you don't know your child's love language, you can take that for them, like with them in mind, and you can figure out what they. So you can't really read it, but there's different examples of like stuff like kids like clean their room for acts of service. What parent would do that, right? And then what's your self-love language? It's really cool to once you know your love language, think about the ways that you can, like Apoorva was saying, like going on a walk, by like if you need that time by yourself to go on a walk, or like acts of service, maybe you're so used to doing stuff for other people, doing stuff for yourself. So those were pretty cool. Okay, next up is Myers-Briggs. We're gonna watch a little video about it because I thought it summed it up pretty well. So let's see if I could click the link.
It'll work. Uh-oh. Well, there it is.
Let's get over it.
Here we go.
Human beings enjoy categorizing things. It facilitates our understanding of relationships between things or concepts that might seem unrelated, as well as creating initial connections that in turn build relationships. It's no surprise then that personality quizzes are so popular, although the majority of them are either outrageously inaccurate or somewhat true at best. The Myers-Briggs test, however, has gained much popularity as a deeply insightful and accurate profile of characteristics within a person. Created by Isabel Briggs Myers and her mother Catherine, the test based on Carl Jung's psychological types categorizes individuals into one of 16 types. These types are 4-letter acronyms, divided on the different ways a person perceives and relates to the world and others around them. The 4-letter acronyms can be defined as the following: introvert versus extrovert. The first acronym characterizes individuals as either introverted or extroverted. A misconception of introverts is that they are reserved or shy, but it is actually how they derive energy from their inner world and need to be alone to recharge. They may feel drained of energy when spending too much time with others. Extroverts, on the other hand, are energized by interaction with people. Their energy comes from outer world activities, as they prefer to move into action and make things happen. Intuition versus sensing. Sensing types tend to pay attention to the physical world around them. They notice facts, the practicality of things, and trust experience heavily. Intuitive types prefer to work with the abstract, paying more attention to meaning and patterns. They are more interested in new possibilities or thinking about ideas than reality and hands-on experience. Thinking versus feeling. This pair describes how individuals prefer to make decisions. Thinkers prefer to make decisions logically, by being impersonal to avoid outside influences. They look for logical explanations, then apply it when making decisions, and believe that truth is more important than tact. In contrast, feeling types weigh personal opinion and other points of view when making decisions. Concerned with harmony and how the people involved will be affected, they lean more towards tact than telling the cold truth. They like to approach decision-making through compassion and heart. And lastly, judging versus perceiving. These traits express your orientation to the outer world, what others tend to see. Judging types are commonly seen as orderly and live to have control over their lives through organisation. They are seen as list makers, task-orientated, and are usually work before play kind of people. Those who are a perceiving type, however, appear to be flexible and spontaneous. Instead of organising their world, perceiving types look as if they want to adapt to it, mixing work and play and keeping plans to a minimum. So, those are the 4 categories of the Myers-Briggs personality types. An individual's final type is made up of one of each of the categories, then combined. In the description below are links to various sources, including an online test to determine what your type is. Take the test and comment below on your type. I'm an INFP. What personality type are you?
ISTJ. Cool. So some of you guys know your letters?
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, we're not going to take the test today, but I'm going to kind of go through the different parts of Myers-Briggs. Oh my gosh, what's happening?
I didn't even know what she said. Oh. Whoa, look at you. You seemed pretty opposed to P types. You were like visibly like, no.
No.
It's funny. You could tell that those last 2 letters, P or J. Yeah, like obviously, like through me making a PowerPoint, I'm a J. Like, here is a list.
Here are facts.
I put them in order.
Yes.
By type. Okay, so Myers-Briggs types was like the first personality test that I kind of like started studying a little bit, and I found it very insightful. So we're just gonna do a little overview of it. So Myers-Briggs was made by Catherine Cook Briggs and her daughter Isabel Briggs Myers.
Got it.
Okay, it is based on the conceptual theory proposed by Carl Jung.
We all know.
Wow, cool.
Good job, Carl.
Yeah. Okay, I thought this was so interesting. It was created during World War II for women entering the workforce for the first time when all the men were gone. And so they would take this and figure out where it would be best for them to go.
Interesting.
I know, I found that really interesting. So just like what it was made for, it is mostly used in in business settings. A lot of businesses use Myers-Briggs with their employees, trying to see like how people work on teams and like who has leadership skills, those kind of things. So it is meant to measure psychological preferences and how people perceive the world and make decisions. So the video kind of went over the letters. And once again, it's a combination of one of these. Look at this laser pointer. Okay.
You're jaying out.
And it is not an either or situation.
Right.
It is a scale of which one are you? Which one are you more leaning towards? Like I know some people who are like in the middle of extrovert introvert, which is kind of interesting. You know, like they don't even know which one they are because they are.
Yeah, I had went to a huge weekend thing where they were doing all this leadership stuff, and the guy described extrovert and introvert in a kind of a different way.
Mhm.
It was both a positive way where introverts get their energy off of withdrawing from people. They can be around people, but they need to withdraw. So like if they go on a weekend group, they love the room by themselves. Where the extrovert gets their energy off of people. So they want to, not only do they want to be in the party, they want to go back and be in the room with lots of people and stay. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting because it's a positive thing. It's just learning that, you can be with people, but you need to let the introverts have their time.
Yeah, so they don't get burn out at the end. Yeah, exactly.
So should mates have opposite ones?
I know, right? Actually, like, there's a website that kind of, if you look at your personality, your 4 letters, it kind of tells you who you might work well with and those kind of things. I don't know about that though. We are actually going to go deeper into introverts, extroverts upcoming. But before we do, if you know your letter, I found this Myers-Briggs personality types in the Bible. I am David, no big deal. Anybody else know their letters? Mary Alice, what was yours?
I'm Jonathan. I'll be the Jonathan to your David.
I'm an ISFJ.
ISFJ, Mary, Mother of Jesus.
Aww.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Wow.
Great, I'm a prophet.
Emily, which one are you? You're Luke.
I'm Luke.
All right, I can see that.
FT is loose for me.
A 4, but you know,
I'm Peter.
Peter.
Oh my God. Same.
You say. Anybody else know theirs you want to share?
Barnabas.
I think I'm Jeremiah.
You're Luke.
I'm pretty sure I'm an INFJ, so I think I'm Jeremiah.
Ooh. I thought that was so fun. Okay. All right, so I read a book that talked more about introverts and extroverts. I thought it was pretty interesting. Like we were talking about earlier, how introvert is not shy, and extrovert doesn't mean outgoing. It's where you gain your energy. As in, like, an introvert could be super outgoing and fine with people, but they just get their energy from withdrawing. Introverts prefer quiet moments and focusing within. Extroverts enjoy stimulation and focus on the world around. So there are some fun facts about introverts and extroverts. They are literally wired differently, according to this one book I was reading, so not a professional psychologist. So let me make sure I'm reading this correctly. So, under processing information, extroverts think faster than introverts. They process information more quickly because information travels on shorter pathways through their brains. So that information bypasses parts of the brain that introverts actually rely on more heavily. And I thought that was so interesting, and that makes sense. Have you ever been in a situation where one person is like right here?
Yes.
Yeah, Emily?
I was just gonna say that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, where like one person's making all these decisions and the other person's like, wait, wait.
There's a lot of brothers and sisters.
Wait, are you guys opposite? Or one of you?
She doesn't know what she is, but
Okay.
Paul knows what she is. That's the sum up, right?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's the nervous systems. Introverts prefer the rest and digest mode. Okay, they prefer the quiet, more developed prefrontal cortex, responsible for. They like abstract thought and decision making. They like thinking right there. Extroverts use the side responsible for fight and flight mode. So they're more responsive to dopamine, like taking big risks, and they crave stimulation. So like when I do homework, I want to go to a coffee shop where there's people everywhere. I saw you flinch. Okay, so and then caffeine, fun fact, that I read in a book. Research shows that caffeine boosts extroverts, right? They love the stimulation and can burden introverts. So introverts don't need the extra stimulation, whereas extroverts if I'm gonna go hang out with friends, I want to drink coffee and just be jazzed, you know. So, does any introverts relate to the caffeine thing? I've talked to a couple. Yeah.
All day long. Just sip
And it doesn't make
it doesn't do anything. If I down it, chug it, then it will.
Yeah.
But I just sip it like 8 cups through the day.
There's a certain time you gotta stop. Yeah. Wow.
Just
Good job.
They're small cups. They're really small.
Espresso.
See, I'm an introvert. I have to use caffeine to be extroverted when I don't want to. It helps me.
It does.
Yes, no.
So you're saying an introvert drinks caffeine and feels the effects, but it's too much for them. It doesn't let them think the way they want to think. Is that what you're saying?
Or like that they don't crave bounce off of it. Maybe like extroverts do. Like it affects them differently.
Don't get a coffee at a sports game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I had a roommate who would drink coffee and fall asleep.
Processing information.
Yeah.
That one is, an extrovert wants to know something right now.
Yes. Because their brains go.
But an introvert will never give you an answer.
That's how my husband and I want. Lord, what are you going to say?
So when I took a class on this a couple of years ago, a few. That's a different story. So anyway, that's what I want. So one of the things that they said is when you're married, like an extrovert and an introvert, and they gave an example of how they process.
Mm-hmm.
An extrovert wants to buy a car, so they're talking about it, they're going to go, which stresses out the introvert because they don't look at the ads and check out the engine, and so, meanwhile, this one, well, let's go look at cars, and they're going, no, we need to. So it's, to me, that stuck really well about how you need to be careful about how your partner processes. Mm-hmm. Because while you're excited about getting the car, this person wants to research and blah blah blah, and it's like just yeah,
the balance of it.
Yeah, so that's just an example that has stuck with me over the years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so if you think about it, you know, if you go around the room, that's how it would go. You know, any kind of decision like that.
Yep, which is, I think these Myers-Briggs are important if you are in your family unit, you and your spouse, you're in a team, like, the leadership here at SHOP, you guys are in a team. It's nice to know how you process information, especially all 4 letters, to kind of understand why someone wants to make a list and someone wants to be spontaneous. Literally.
I knew you were thinking that when you underlined the word.
Literally.
Okay, so places can be introverted or extroverted too. So in America, it seems like the church is becoming more extroverted. Has anybody experienced this before? So go ahead and think about that. So generally speaking, churches have more extroverted qualities, such as turn to someone next to you and greet each other. I know, I even hate that, and I'm an extrovert. I've heard of introverts who purposely arrive to church late so they get to miss this part. So what about, the sharing testimonies on stage, lunch after service, doing service projects together. Community is awesome. I'm just saying that, it's church can be very extroverted. So, so you need to recognize your personality, your church's personality, the place you're going to, and finding a balance. Has anybody been involved in a very extroverted church? Raise your hand if you have. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, has anybody ever been involved in an introverted church? So one example in a book I was reading was talking about like an Anglican church they went to, very quiet, very structured. They knew what was going to happen, and there wasn't a lot of stimulation. So, and for that person, for the author, it was a good fit for their family to have the introverted setting, which was really eye-opening for me. Okay, so now the whole reason that I'm doing this is for the Enneagram.
Is that how to say it?
The Enneagram. Okay, so here is a summary of the Enneagram. The Enneagram teaches that there are 9 different personality styles in the world, one of which we naturally gravitate toward and adopt in childhood to cope and feel safe. Each type or number has a distinct way of seeing the world and an underlying motivation that powerfully influences how that type thinks, feels, and behaves. Whew, that's a lot to take in. We are going to unpack it. Don't worry, but that's just the big summary. The Enneagram for me has in the last couple months has been really insightful to me, has really helped me work through some things. So I want to just give this tool to you, explain it, because I jumped into it without like understanding what I was doing, and it kind of started out like icky, and then I was like, oh, I get it. So I wanted to give you guys this tool if you want to pursue learning about your Enneagram. So we're going to unpack this summary real quick. Okay. It is 9 different personality styles. So the word Enneagram means 9-sided figure, which you'll see that circle on your sheet. That is the figure it is referring to. It's unclear exactly when or where it started, but has many ties to ancient practices. So, for example, let me see if I have it. It was, some trace it to 4th century Christian monk named
Vigorous.
Yeah.
Vegas.
Right. Whose teaching later influenced the formation of the 7 deadly sins. In the Oscar Ichazo coded these types in the 50s and 60s, and then in the 1970s, I should clarify, right? In the 1970s, it came to the U.S., where it initially caught on among Catholic seminaries and priests, and became a tool for spiritual formation in the 70s there. And then it became more popular in the 80s and 90s when authors started writing more about the Enneagram in the 80s and 90s. And right now it's having like a renaissance or whatever. Like it's becoming more popular. More authors are writing about it right now, where I have heard about it. So it's been around for a while. It's not completely clear where it started, but there's a lot of authors about it. So it is not scientifically driven or through clinical psychology. It is more just observation and, like I said, from a long time ago, kind of 7 deadly sins kind of thing. Okay, so it's we naturally gravitate toward and adopt in childhood. So growing up is super hard for kids, right? There's a lot of things that happen growing up, like even you have the best childhood, but God created you. You were created in the reflection of God, right? And you have natural temperances. And when you're growing up, you tend to rely on a certain personality pattern to survive, if that makes sense. So as you're growing up, as you're being parented, as you're making friends, being in the workplace, you kind of learn different coping mechanisms. That makes sense. Like not coping in like a traumatic way, but you learn how like you work in the world around you. So like I said, Genesis 1, so there's the natural things we were created, our personality that God created us to be. Psalm 131, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Genesis 1, God made us, we were made in his image. And then, so as we're growing up, there was armor that we put on ourselves. But the Enneagram helps us recognize that armor that we didn't realize was there, and we can work to take it off to become our best selves. So there might be some, maybe there's like some so for childhood wounds, there might be like something that happened to you when you were a kid that maybe wasn't a big deal, but because of your natural personality, it hurt you. And then you started this personality pattern. And as you grow up, you're naturally in that pattern that you don't realize, that thought pattern, that motivation that's there. So we'll talk about that some more as we dive into them. Okay, so the underlying motivation that powerfully influences. So with the Enneagram, this is based on your motivation, not your behavior, if that makes sense. Like why you do what you do, why you think what you think. So then it highlights your best and your worst. So when I found out my number, I didn't know anything about the Enneagram. I just was like, ooh, a personality test, fun. Everybody's talking about this one. So I took the test, it told me my number, and I started reading the description. And I was like, oh, how fun. This is a fun personality test. As I'm reading like this description that like not perfectly, but it like echoed some things about myself that I didn't realize. And it was just like hitting my heart. And I was like, oh, I do that, don't I? Oh my gosh. And I didn't realize that the purpose of it was to show you your worst and show you your best, if that makes sense. So the Enneagram highlights, we'll talk about stress and security in a bit, but it's supposed to show you maybe where you're, maybe where you could be at your worst, where you're at when you're stressed, and where you are at in security, where you are when you are at your best. If that makes sense. Okay, it's a tool, once again, for self-knowledge and self-awareness. This quote says, knowing what your personality type is so that you can let it go. So the whole purpose of it is to recognize personality patterns that we have and then being able to notice those in your everyday life so that you can start working against them, the negative, like the ones that are not healthy for you, recognizing those and being able to resist those personality patterns and then to become your best self, which sounds hippy-dippy. Okay, so here's the 9 different types. So I'm just gonna tell you the names of them real quick just so that you know. We're not gonna dive into all of them. So there's number 1, the perfectionist, number 2, the helper, number 3, the achiever, number 4, the individualist, number 5, the investigator, number 6, the loyal skeptic, number 7, the enthusiast, thank you. Number 8, the leader, number 9, the peacemaker. So those are the different areas. Now, it doesn't matter what number the order is in. It doesn't matter. 1 is not better than 9. 8 is not better than 4. It doesn't matter. The numbers are just numbers. They were meant to just represent something. None of them are better than the other. But certain cultures value some more than others. The leader might be more culturally valued in one culture, whereas in another one, the peacemaker might be more valued. Does that make sense? Okay, I will explain the lines later. Okay, the numbers can be split into 3 different categories. These are the areas where you make decisions, where your thinking takes place. It's split into head, heart, and gut. So let me make sure I have this right. Okay, the instinctive center is the gut. These are the people that think with their gut, and 8, 9, and 1 are grouped into that category. The feeling center, 2, 3, and 4 are the heart. These are people that think with their feelings, that are motivated by feelings. And then the thinking center is the head. These are the ones that are analytical and are motivated by thinking through things. So, for example, like how number 4 is in the feeling center. Number 4 has strengths and weaknesses that are motivated by their feelings. So those are where most of those take place, if that makes sense. Okay, the lines. These are really fun. Oh, do you want me to go back, Riley?
Yeah.
Watch, look at that.
Thanks.
Just point questions. I'll just explain right here that you are like primarily one number, but the numbers next to you, adjacent, are, you could definitely, you could have aspects of those as well. Once again, it's just a shade of a color. This doesn't define you. It just helps you understand yourself better. Okay, so I just learned about these lines like a couple weeks ago because it was so confusing to me. But this is what the theory is, that when you find out your number, and I'm just going to overview this because this took me a while to understand, but when you're moving when you're growing or when you're moving in stress, you can naturally, like you can digress towards a different number. Okay, let me explain that. So I am the lovely number 2. Woo! That means nothing to you guys. Okay, so stress. So in stress, okay, let me explain I gotta explain these lines. Good thing I have this laser pointer. Okay, so the lines are supposed to go in one direction. So let's see if I can do this. 3, 6, and 9 are all connected in this triangle. And then I'll start at 1. These numbers are connected like this.
Oh my goodness, that person's complex.
And back to 1. Yeah, do you want me to do that again?
3, 6, and 9 are really easy.
Okay, so this is the direction of stress. So when I am stressed, this is saying that I exhibit the negative qualities of 8. Now, 8 was the leader, the challenger, and I was like, what? Like, what? And then I thought about Science of Wonders camp.
I was going to say.
So I think about the most stressful time of my life at Science of Wonders camp. And when you're running on low energy,
No.
No.
What's happening?
Clicker.
I don't.
There it
It's
is.
okay.
Okay. So
She's experiencing that stress right now.
don't you dare! Okay, so the leader challenger, so the negative parts of number 8 are wanting to be in charge and challenge people kind of thing. So at Science and Wonders Camp, when I think about when I was really stressed, when I was early at my lowest or whatever, I wanted to be in charge of things. I wanted to make sure all the ducks are lined up. I'm running around like, okay, is this right? Do you have this? Do you have this? And I want to make sure everything is right and that I'm in charge. I might even question authority. I might challenge what decisions people are making. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that helped me realize, oh yeah, when I'm stressed, I am exhibiting those patterns. Okay, growth.
And you only go one step away. So if a 1 is stressed, they're exhibiting the worst of 4.
Yeah. And then I'll just, because I know those numbers, 1 is the perfectionist, 4 is the individualist. So when the perfectionist is exhibiting the negative, the weaknesses of 4, they're really deep in themselves and they're really just within themselves, just thinking about a ton of things. I know that because my roommate's a 4 and we studied this together. I got to talk about why she's awful. Just kidding. Okay. Once again, take this as you want. This isn't the Bible. You figure this out, right? Growth is when you are being healthy personality-wise, when you are growing, you are exhibiting the strengths of that number. So me, the 2, when I'm growing, I'm exhibiting the strengths of 4. And the number 4 is called the individualist. And so I guess that means when I'm growing that I'm a hipster. I'm very,
You're hippy dippy.
very cool, hippy dippy. I'm very hip and individual. Just kidding. I haven't really studied that part as much as the stress part. Okay.
What's an individualist? What's that mean? I mean,
Oh.
what's that character trait?
Okay, yeah, so I do have type descriptions that we're gonna do at the end. So, yeah, so you don't have to worry about those ones yet. Okay, so this was a fun little, little comment about people's perspectives at a dinner party. So, so number 1, the perfectionist says, not enough food groups represented here. Number 4, the one who's individualist says, cheap caviar, shocking. Let me see if there's, number 8, the challenger, pass it all down here. Number 3 is someone who likes being active and having lots of things to do. I need to eat and run, I'm swamped. So once you know your type, this is pretty fun. I bet some of you already know your type with me talking. Okay. So we're gonna do a little case study using these personality types. Like I'm just gonna give you like the general, and you're gonna tell me what that person might struggle with, or like how they would connect with God. So one thing I forgot to talk about that now I'm remembering is that with these 9 personality types, they're kind of, so they're founded on motivations, why you do what you do, why you think what you think. And so in the description, they have like your basic desire and your basic fear. So what you want and what you're scared of. So this is going to be for the Enneagram type number 1. This is the perfectionist, the reformer. Their basic desire is to be good, to have integrity, and to be balanced. Their basic fear is of being corrupt or evil, defective. So think about what they want, what they're afraid of. And I want you to think about right now, this person who desires to be good, who desires balance, who's scared of being corrupt or evil, how would you expect them to connect to God? I know it's kind of a vague description, but I'm sure some of you are thinking of some people you know like this. How would you expect them to connect to God? What thought patterns should they be wary of? And what might you recommend them to do or think about? I've obviously had more time to think about this, so if no one has any idea, I can kind of share what my thoughts were. But let's start with, how would you expect them to connect to God? What might God say to them? What might God do? Mary Allison?
I would think their favorite thing about God would be that He saves them from their sins. That would be really important to them.
Mm-hmm.
God as Savior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was thinking getting confirmation from God who they are, and God, like confirmation of who God thinks they are.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Okay. What thought patterns should they be wary of? Like, what kind of thoughts do you think they have?
They think they're a failure.
Condemning thoughts.
Condemning, like, oh, I sinned again.
Even like legalistic tendencies, I would think, where it's like, I've got to do this to make God proud of me to be good.
Yeah. What would you recommend? Which I think we kind of talked about, how do they connect to God? Like spending time with God, letting God tell them, I saved you. You're righteous. It's fine. I love you.
Yeah.
Okay. Case study number 2. Enneagram type number 2, the giver, helper, the giver, not the book. Okay, basic desire to feel loved, basic fear of being unwanted, unworthy of being loved. So same practice, let's say, how would you expect them to connect to God? What thought patterns should they be wary of? What would you recommend? Type 2. So their basic desire to feel loved, basic fear, unworthy of being loved. Obviously what comes to mind is God saying, I love you. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do anything, right? What thoughts do you guys have about that?
Seems like they want to be served. Like they want to like earn God's love by
to be worthy.
Other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, so now.
I think that what they should be wary of is, like you said, striving.
Yeah.
Like for that person, they've got to feel like they've got to do enough to be worthy, but just to like bask in God's acceptance of them, regardless.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so does anybody, I'm gonna explain the, we're gonna take a test to find your Enneagram number and then kind of have to reflect on it. And, obviously ponder, not like say like, oh, this test told me exactly who I am. But does anybody have questions about the Enneagram before we take the little test or anything? Okay, I'm gonna explain a little bit more. Okay, I'm gonna tell you about the resources. They're on the back of your paper. Some resources, some that I use, some that I think you might want to use, some books. Okay, have you heard of the Hoopla app?
Yes.
Okay. Hoopla app connects to your library card and you can listen to audiobooks for free. And several of the books I used were you have to either buy them or you can listen to them for free. So the Introverts in the Church, I haven't read that one yet, but I'm really excited to read that one. The Love Languages has so many different versions of it, kids, teenagers, spouses, whatever. Podcasts, I use the Overcast app. That's my favorite for podcasts. Some podcasts, do you guys know what a podcast is? Mm-hmm. Yep. Just a little history. Okay. The Typology podcast is really cool because there's a bunch of different podcasts on the different Enneagram numbers. So, for example, I listened to a podcast on typology that was a panel of twos. A bunch of people who identified as number 2.
Mary Allison.
Your brain went there.
It sure did.
Nate's out for
So if you can go onto Typology podcast and you can find like a specific podcast just about your number where they talk more about in depth about your number. So mine was really, really awesome listening to other people who struggle with the things I struggle with. I was like, oh my gosh, it's not just me. Okay, there's a podcast called The Liturgist, and it's episode 37 that they go really in depth with the Enneagram. I put a warning because this was during election time, and maybe they say things that might be controversial, so like very vaguely in the middle. So just like a heads up. Trigger warning.
Okay.
And also with the Liturgist, I just like using this now. They have like some of the main guy is Michael Gungor. He's from the band Gungor, and he has like some different theological beliefs than we hold. But it's just a good episode about the Enneagram. So I'm not saying that I agree with him. I'm just saying it's a good episode. Okay. And then online on Instagram, there's a account called Your Enneagram Coach, and she posts series of information. For example, right now she's posting a series called How Type 7 Feels Loved, like how to love a Type 7, and she'll give like examples of like, so if you know your spouse's Enneagram number, you could look at that and say like, oh, this is how I can show up to them. Okay. I told you about the Love Languages online for kids, and Relevant Magazine has a couple articles about the Enneagram. For example, what all Christians need to know about the Enneagram, Bible characters according to your Enneagram type, and Enneagram makes sanctification. So fun stuff. All right, so now we're gonna stretch and find our type. So I'm gonna explain this real quick, and then you guys can take a little break and we'll jump into this. So you're gonna need a smart device. I have extras.
I brought extra smart devices.
I know. I brought my work iPad and computer if anybody needed it. There we go. Okay, so you're going to go to exploreyourtype.com.
Wow.
So exciting.
Good job taking my phone.
I love taking online tests.
So you can make up an email address if you don't have one.
I'm not sure which one I have. It's more.
Yeah.
What's it called?
I know what you mean.
Right there, bud.
Oh, sorry.
So just keep it and check it out with this to. He held on this whole lesson. He's so sweet.
He doesn't want to know his name.
Yes.